Welcome to a post-Hurricane Matthew episode of Off the Shelf.
It'll be off the chain.
Yeah, we only lost power for about 6 hours. We made it out a lot better than some people, but as you can tell, we took a lot of stuff down, reorganized some things in case the windows blew in. So that's why the posters aren't hanging up, and this is a little different if you pay that much attention to detail, but you probably don't. The mise-en-scène of the off-the-shelf set. Speaking of pretentious things, welcome to our first foreign language episode of Off the Shelf. We watched Andrei Tarkovsky's science fiction masterpiece, Solaris. Those of you who aren't familiar with Andrei Tarkovsky, he is considered to be the best, kind of like the
Pinnacle.
the Soviet Russia's most famous filmmaker.
Soviet Russia's golden boy.
And even for all the success that he experienced as an early filmmaker with films like Ivan's Childhood and...
Stalker?
No, that was after Solaris. It was Ivan's Childhood in 1962 and then Andrei Rublev in 1966.
Move on!
He still suffered from like the Soviet censors and stuff. The reason he was able to get Solaris made is Solaris is based off the book Solaris by Stanislaw Lem, and he had written a script that the Soviet censors had said, like, no, you can't make this. Hey, it's backstory. They're like, no, you can't make that. So he thought that if he wrote a sci-fi script, that would be a little more accessible to the masses, and he would be able to get it past the censors. Turns out he was right, and they allowed him to make the film adaptation.
Is this not sci-fi?
This is sci-fi.
Then how would him writing a sci-fi script have anything to do with getting it past the censors?
Because the script he was writing was not science fiction. Not two different scripts.
Oh.
He had written a script, and then he's like, oh, I could adapt Solaris, and that the censors would dig that. And they did, and he took it to Cannes, and it won the Grand Jury Award at the Cannes Film Festival in France.
Doing great, buddy.
We're doing so great. It's amazing. That's the backstory.
I'm so glad we covered
on
this.
how Solaris got made for 600 million yen in 1972.
Which today, 600 million yen is worth $5.8 million.
Look at all these facts you're finding out.
All these things you didn't need to know.
So let's talk about. Let's
do a talk about.
Yeah. What were your expectations? First off,
I
came to you this morning and said, "Hey, let's watch this movie."
I was a little worried longer ago, like when I first saw it on your shelf, and you were like, "Oh, let's watch Solaris," and I was like, "What the heck is that?" And you were like, "It's Russian science fiction. It's all subtitles." And I was like, "Subtitles?" A film overview later, I had a glorious experience with that, and that was an all German film, and I totally dug that. So I was then a little more
open to the foreign film scene.
Yes.
Have you seen Crouching Tiger?
Yeah, but I saw that when I was like 12.
It's really good.
And there's like so much action in that you don't really need to know what they're saying.
It's real good.
You can watch that without the
Tiger's
subtitles.
A good movie.
You can watch that movie without any subtitles at all and still know exactly what's happening.
I mean, and that's the mark of any good film.
Yeah.
Is the being able to tell the story visually.
Yeah. Anyway, but so point being,
pretentious.
I had no expectations going into this other than knowing that I was going to read.
Mm-hmm.
But until the very first shot of the film, I wasn't expecting quite as much esoteric indulgence.
Well, I mean, I would have thought that there was at least going to be some sort of... Because I had a presupposition in my mind that it was probably going to be like 2001: A Space Odyssey.
And you were right. And of course...
they were they were a couple of years
like
apart.
7 years. But like watching the first frame, and I went, oh, this is one of those movies.
Well, okay, sidetrack. Film looks so good.
Oh, it does.
It looks so good.
The opening shot and the first 5 or 6 shots are just like nature shots, and they're so pretty.
Digital filmmaking has advanced a lot since it first began. Like the Alexa shoots gorgeous images, so that like it'll like almost trick you into thinking that you're watching something that was shot on 35 millimeter. But film looks so good.
The amount of, and I don't know if part of it was just like he chose better areas, or maybe his, like the wash they did on the film afterwards or something. But all of the color that is in the first like 5 minutes of the film is just so pristine and delightful.
Well, all of Tarkovsky's movies are known for...
it's like watching a Pixar movie.
Kind of. They're known for their cinematography.
Pushing the boundaries of color.
Vadim Yusov. So it was him and Tarkovsky.
Vadim Yusov? That seems like he just took 2 Russian names and
shortened them. And Tarkovsky is known for doing a lot of longer shots, taking his time to build character through not necessarily dialogue, but just from lingering, slowly dollying into their faces, where we can really see the emotion. Because this movie doesn't have, for its almost 3-hour runtime,
2 hours and 47 minutes.
There's not a phenomenal amount of dialogue. The scenes where there is dialogue, it's pretty intellectual, and there's a lot being said, but then there's a lot of the movie where there's not really any sound to speak of.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was noticing, and I think I said to you multiple times, is there's an extreme lack of Foley, as well as
it's really just
no soundtrack. The only soundtrack is there's occasionally
kind of electrical noises.
Yeah, there's some in terms of music, there's a little bit of every once in a while ambiance, but that could really kind of be put into the sound design category of spaceship sound. The only music is that Bach piece. There's a Bach prelude for the organ. I think the entire film was ADR. But
ADR stands for automated dialogue replacement.
I wouldn't have been surprised.
Your own dialogue in a film,
Shut up.
Let's just talk about the film plot for a moment, and I can then talk about where it differs from the book, and because I've read the book.
Sure. So what happens is you've got basically the main character, and that's Chris Kelvin. He starts out. There's some scenes at the very beginning where he's still on Earth.
He's talking to his father, who I don't believe ever gets a name. No, it's his dad and his aunt.
Okay.
Not in a relationship. They're just living in the same home.
They're just the same people. Okay.
He's a psychologist, and he's about to leave to go to the space station on this planet Solaris. And in preparation, his father has invited this family friend Burton over, who's a pilot who has been to Solaris before, and had an interesting experience while he was there. And so they're watching a film reel of kind of a deposition of sorts.
Burton's story of what happened when he was on there. And I think the IMDb plot line is that it's a psychologist goes to a space station to try and figure out why all the people there are going insane. And so I think that kind of includes Burton.
Yeah, which that's not the initial thrust.
And it's also not even really true.
No, because it's in the book and in the movie, it's more that he's being sent to the space station to determine its viability. Yeah. Because it's become kind of a nuisance.
And now there happens to be an aspect of he thinks the people might be going insane, but then they're not. And he finds out that they're not, and he knows they're not. Which brings us to spoilers.
Right. So Chris Kelvin, played by Donatas...
Don't just stop.
Benionis.
You don't need to.
Goes to the space station, and essentially the rest of the story kind of revolves around the idea that the ocean of Solaris is sentient and able to tap into the consciousnesses of the people on the station and then bring to life more or less pieces of their mind that it thinks, oh, that's interesting. And so Chris Kelvin starts to see visions of his dead wife.
Yeah,
but not visions, she's really there. Yeah. Flesh and blood really
There's
there.
3 people on the ship that he goes to. There's 3 people left from this expedition because most of the other people have abandoned the idea that they can make contact with whatever's there. So there's Snout, also known as Snow.
Who's Snow in the book, yeah.
Snout is not Snow, who is...
He's just a scientist.
He's just a scientist, I guess. And then there's what is his name?
Gabarin. Who's
another scientist. And then there's...
Who has committed suicide before Chris Kelvin ever arrives.
Yes, then there's...
And he knew Kelvin personally in the past.
Sartorius.
Yep.
Sartorius, who is the main like lab technician guy.
He's like the head scientist.
The smartest of the scientists.
To dive super deep and detailed into the plot is gonna go on for a long time. So that's like the inciting, what builds everything up, and then the movie just carries on from there.
It reminded me. The plot of it actually reminded me of. Is it Michael Crichton who wrote Sphere?
Yes.
Sphere. Reminded me. Not Sphere. What's the other one that's underwater? The one that Samuel L. Jackson is in the movie version of it.
Sphere.
Is that the same one?
Yes.
I thought there were two versions of this.
You're thinking of The Abyss.
I'm thinking of
That's
both.
James Cameron.
Yeah.
Sphere.
Sphere is the one that. Okay, I was right. Yeah. Sphere.
With Dustin Hoffman and Samuel L. Jackson.
Sphere. It reminded me a little bit of that in like general theme, where there's an alien something that messes with their minds. The alien something that there's minds. It like reads their minds and brings something to the world. Anyway, in a slightly less suspenseful and dangerous way.
The big theme, I mean, there's a lot of themes in Solaris, but the one that I took away most from the book and from the movie is this notion of the arrogance of first contact, of the assumption on humanity's part that in a world in which we discover there is another life somewhere in the universe, that we know for certain that we will be able to communicate with it. But the book and the movie both touch on this notion of, what if we discover a life form and we can't make contact with it because it doesn't realize we exist? Because it's so grand. In the book, they use the idea of like, if it became a deity and we were praying to it, but it didn't know that it was a deity, and so it didn't know that we were praying to it, and so it just never really even realized that we were there.
Well, it's like the same thing that you were talking about of you used the analogy, I don't know if this was also, you got this from the book or whatever, but of like if you step on an ant, you may never know that you stepped on that ant.
But you have had a profound impact
on that ant's life.
On the ant's existence.
Yeah.
But you don't even know that you stepped on it. I don't think that was the analogy used in the book. That was just one.
If you step on the wife of an ant, you ruined that other ant's life. He lost his wife.
But you will never know.
You never know that. Now that ant has to go back to his home and feed his 3 kids and go back to his 9-to-5 job.
Yeah. What if we leave and we could have made first contact?
Yeah.
Like, we can't leave, we have to try. It's our moral obligation to try and make first contact with Solaris. And there's themes of, like, what is our place in the universe? Because there is that whole idea of
what does it mean to be human?
Well, yes, because it's creating these, like, his wife, Harry, who's named Rhea in the book, she realizes at some point that she's not actually human, that she's just a construct of the planet.
Well, it's Sartorius tells her.
And she doesn't know what to do with that, because the longer she lasts in a corporeal form, the more human she feels, the more attached she feels to Chris, and vice versa, because he still has a lot of guilt over her death because she committed suicide because he left, blah, 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 blah. If there's life to be communicated with, it's our moral responsibility to make first contact.
At least that's what they thought.
The scientists felt, and who knows if Tarkovsky actually felt that way. He was just trying to make this intimate piece about people and relationships. He had talked about how he was not a fan of the 2001: A Space Odyssey because he thought it was too cold and sterile, and he wanted to create a piece that had some of the same themes but was more about the human relationships.
And you can definitely see aspects of him being somewhat inspired by 2001. Even just from
because they are from that same era.
Yeah.
The editing style.
The editing style, as well as some of the in-camera effects that he did. I'm assuming those were in-camera effects from the.
Oh, it would have to be.
Yeah.
72, yeah. There's a lot of really cool shots of the ocean.
Yeah,
the ocean
with like different layers of water effects.
Just really cool, really like
things that Apple would pay a lot of money to use as their screensavers.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about the other interesting elements. We've touched on the cinematography.
There's more interesting elements.
Yeah, the set, the cinematography.
That's true. We kind of got past some. So now you get to talk about the fun stuff.
Mise en scène. I'm gonna keep.
Jake read that word in the Solaris.
I should have been using it more.
And now he's just gonna use it like 8
Film
times.
school.
Shut up. There's some things that get lost in translation, or like if you look away from the movie and then you look back and you go, wait a second.
It's very indulgent.
I miss things. There's a lot happening, so I got distracted. I got bored a couple times. This kind of movie is not my
it is 2 hours
my milieu.
2 hours and 46 minutes.
47 minutes, Jake. Pete's
Yikes.
sakes.
Post credits.
Yeah. So watching it, I definitely I was drawn out of it a couple times just because I'm not as much of a film person.
Snob.
Yes, the schnort. The biggest question I had the entire film was at one point he when he first encounters his dead wife, he gets rid of her by putting her in a rocket and shoots her away into space.
Do we even care about spoilers for a Russian film that came out in '72?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Anyway, but he shoots her away, and as he's doing so, the rocket that's coming out of the ground says Solaris in English.
Everything else in the film
Everything
is in
else.
Russian.
The title cards that come up, it says Solaris distinctly in Russian because it's spelled with
But even, like,
C's
the name
and
tags
other
on the
Russian letters.
doors and
All
all,
that,
like, the safety
every
information
single
on the
thing,
walls.
it's all Russian. But the
Everything's written in
spaceship that he
Russian.
shoots his wife off in says Solaris in English.
Big English.
And you
print.
go,
Why?
wait a second.
The set is also very detailed.
Yeah,
very
there's
cool.
and it's a really cool unit set.
It's a really cool unit set. A lot of really vibrant colors. It's not like the Nostromo in Alien. All the corridors, for more or less, are very similar. The whole ship has a very coherent feel to it. But the space station on Solaris, everything's kind of different. Like the launch chamber is more of this like orange. It's got this orange and gray color palette. The hallway has like the grays and the reds, the really
big red
bright,
colors, and then there's
reds.
the hallway in front of
The laboratory.
Sartorius's lab is
So
just
a
all
bunch of
white.
Big windows facing out.
All
to the
white
ocean.
except for the windows
Some
change color
weird
during the other times of
crooked
day.
vending machines.
Yeah, at their vending machine, there's a bong on the floor
Never
or
really
something like that.
established.
Big old bong.
And the library has it's all this, all
Brown.
this natural wood and this
Yeah.
really rich green.
It's a very diverse set, even though it's all in the same style. None of it looks different. It's not like you go to a different section and like, are they in the same place? Yeah, it's very cohesive. It's just it's definitely different.
Yeah, but what I was gonna say about the cinematography in relation to the set is apparently I was reading that apparently the set was built with rails in the ceiling so that they could mount the camera and get some of those longer takes.
Yeah, which
because
they
I
do
don't
have.
think Steadicam had really been used very much at that point, if at all. I can't remember when the Steadicam really got in popularity, and even if because this whole thing was made in Soviet Russia, so there's always the question of like what did they have access to, blah 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 blah.
Launch year 1971.
Yeah, so they would not have
Nothing.
had a Steadicam.
Especially not in Soviet Russia.
Yeah, but because that's what I was wondering. Some of those shots down the hallways. Nowadays, you would probably get that on a dolly or a Steadicam, but there were no rails on the floor, and it would have been difficult to get that
Steer
curve.
one, yeah.
Yeah, the production design, like the sets are all dressed very well. Everything feels lifelike.
Yeah, and they
It's
very
not-
definitely they got a lot of genuine pieces of stuff because, and they had to get a lot of them too because that whole this red hallway that we're talking about.
There's so much going on.
All the paneling is like these, like replications of the same kind of
Little
like box
box.
unit with
There's all
like
these
it
little
looks like an
lights
old
and-
radio where
and
there's like
some of
all
them pull
dials and
out,
lights and
because
stuff like
there's
that.
ones that are like pulled out.
There's
and
like
stuff's
it's like
hanging
they're all a
out
bunch of
them.
technological drawers or something.
It's real neat. And the library's got a bunch of really cool stuff in it.
And a great mirror that was used for some excellent shots.
Yeah, there's a lot of, and I mean, that's the kind of stuff I love where, because oftentimes filmmakers will shy away, well, amateur filmmakers will shy away from reflective surfaces because more often it's just difficult because you got to be careful about where you put the camera and is there going to be a shadow or a reflection. But you know a good filmmaker can use those reflective surfaces to his or her advantage.
Like in Jurassic Park when they see the T-Rex behind
Or
them.
like in The New Patriots when he wakes up and then his wife wakes up and you see her in the mirror. So go watch The New Patriots by student Emmy-winning filmmaker Jake Theriault.
Thumbnail.
Solaris, very indulgent. There's a lot of themes that we haven't really touched on because a lot of it is very
It's too much to do.
very esoteric, and you really have to pay attention to get, because there's stuff about like love and loss and interpersonal relationships, because the guy they cast, whose name now escapes me because I'm not staring at it, to play Chris Kelvin,
Donatas Banonios.
just has this look perpetually, like he's so perfect because he always has this really somber, like borderline.
He always looks deep in thought and or depression.
Yeah, like his character has been through a lot, because he still feels guilty about his wife committing suicide, and then suddenly she shows back up. And you imagine that would be really, really hard on a person. And the reason he ends up staying on the station at the end, unlike the others who are dreaming of first contact, he thinks first contact would be great, but also on the off chance that maybe she'd show back up. It's really long, so if you're not really into that whole thing, you should not go for it. But it's worth your time if you really want to sit back and watch a well-crafted, thoughtful science fiction film.
In Russian.
And that is my I would suggest you see this movie. What do you think?
To the people who are probably watching this video, don't waste your time.
No, watch it.
But
It's real good.
to the people who are commenting on the Hollow Sun, go watch it.
Oh. Whoever you are who said you didn't want high boots in space, there's a ton of boots in this movie, so you probably shouldn't watch it. But Chris Kelvin's got, like, boots, like tall boots in this movie. So maybe you wouldn't like it.
I can't even think of a science fiction movie
Because there's
where one of the
high
characters
boots
doesn't have high
in the
boots.
movie. Star Wars, they wear a lot of boots. Alien, everybody wears boots. Looper, I know that they wear boots. 2001, they
They're
probably
short boots,
have
but
boots.
he's got boots on.
Yeah, but like
They're not big
Bruce
boots.
Willis has like construction boots.
Yeah, those aren't high boots.
Yeah. What other space movies?
Thigh-high leather
I'm
boots.
trying to look at my Last Starfighter. Does he have boots? Or does Greg?
I think it's a unit
Does
suit.
Greg have boots?
Greg.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
Dredd has boots.
Dredd has boots. Yeah, so if you don't like movies with boots or really long, indulgent Russian films, don't watch it.
If you like movies with any Pixar fans, great color in this
If you
movie.
like movies with boots or movies shot on film or really well-made, thought-provoking...
or movies where
foreign language
where people
science
who aren't
fiction
humans
films.
but are made out of neutrinos drown themselves in liquid oxygen.
If you want to watch a movie where someone tries to commit suicide by drinking liquid oxygen, you should watch Solaris.
But not like in a violent way.
It's pretty violent.
It's off the shelf.